Welcome, everybody, to the Your Fielder's Choice pre-lock MLB live show. I'm your host, Devin. Today is a special cheat sheet edition. We're going to try and do this once every few weeks just to give you a little look back at the cheat sheet. For those of you who are new, just a good way to learn how to use it. For those of you who have used it in the past, it's always good to get a little refresher just in case you may have forgotten something or, you know, whatever be the case. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into today's slate. We've got let's see how big this slate is technically. We have a 6-game slate. Looking at weather really quick, nothing precipitation wise. We do have some colder temperatures, really in a couple different places. We've got the Rays Royals game is 41. That's very cold. That's pitchers weather. Everything else is 60 degrees or up, so decent hitting weather. So that's the game. That's the really pitching game, which not a surprise. We've got 3.8 totals for both teams there. So, all right, swinging over to the cheat sheet, you can see here, we're here at yourfielderschoice.com. The cheat sheets are at the top. Click on the baseball cheat sheet. Make sure you select your slate. So we're on the main slate. You can see we just updated this right before going live. So at 6 o'clock here. So what we're looking at here is we've got a lot of info. We've got your player pricing, player name, team, hand. This is, the hand which the pitcher throws with. And then we've got some player data. So the cool thing to know about this player data is it is based on the opposing team's final lineup. So what you'll see pretty much everybody else in the industry do is just generic numbers. So like Texas, strikes out, blah, blah, blah percent. Well, we are using the exact lineup. So how many lefties, how many righties they roll out. And then that number, that exact lineup factors into this. So when we see Dylan Bundy at 24.10%, for example, that's based on the Texas lineup. Texas is rolling out 5 lefties and 4 righties. So that's based on Dylan Bundy's numbers against, lefties and righties factored in by how many of them there are in the lineup. Same thing with all these stats. So his WOBA, that's based on the average of the lefties, the righties he's facing, ISO as well. So this is really cool. And so if you're looking at a cheat sheet, you'll notice these numbers might change a little bit during the day. That's why, because as these lineups come out, I update them. I update the cheat sheet. That's pumping in the data. We're getting the really dialed in numbers. So that's really cool because, it makes it a more accurate number than whereas a lot of people are, just taking, like I said, the generic team numbers, and maybe some guy has a crazy strikeout rate. He's not actually starting that day. Well, that's not factoring in for most people. So you're getting a false number. So this way you get a really good number. And then on the flip side, it's the same thing here. This opponent data is based on the handedness of the pitcher they are facing. So these Texas stats are based on their lineup against righties. So again, this number will change a little bit throughout the day as the lineups come in. So we can see here that the K rate is a big one. This is another one where it's really important to get the final lineup because, again, maybe a guy that strikes out a ton isn't starting. So that might bump this number down a little bit, or vice versa. A guy who strikes out a ton's in the lineup, push that number up a little bit. So right off the bat, we can see Joe Musgrove is going to be the popular pay up option. We can see why. Milwaukee has a huge K rate, 28.32% against righties. That's the lineup they're rolling out today. Puts him in a really nice spot. Musgrove has a 23% K rate, which is solid, especially when you factor in that. So that's one of the reasons Musgrove is going to be a pretty popular pay up option here. And again, that's how you utilize these stats. So for cash games, what we're doing too is we're starting here with projected ownership. Projected ownership in cash games is really what DFS has become. It's become nailing the chalk, and then you win with your 2 or 3 other low-owned plays. You eat that chalk, especially when it's in a good spot. I hear a lot of guys, a lot of members will say, screw chalk. Listen, if a guy is in a smash spot and he's going to be chalky, just play him. There's no upside to fading him. The idea of, these pivots in cash games just don't make a lot of sense. Now, if it's a chalk guy where you're like, I don't get it, the stats don't back it up, you want to make a pivot there, fine. But like a Joe Musgrove tonight, again, Texas has or Milwaukee has really big K rate against. He's got solid stats here. You can see his numbers are really good. So he's going to be chalky, and for a good reason. So what we're looking for in cash games is nailing that chalk. So really, you can see we just have a handful of pitchers in play here. Musgrove, Bundy. Then you got a couple of these value guys. All these guys are certainly in play. They're all at different price ranges. Even Woodruff, to an extent, is in play. The issue with Woodruff is he's facing San Diego. If you look at the numbers here, a little bit lower K rate. His numbers are good, but you can get Dylan Bundy has very, very comparable numbers for cheaper. So that's why you're going to see a lot of guys stick to this range. So cash games, that's what you're looking for, is the projected ownership. You can see on FanDuel, Musgrove is going to be the chalk. Over on DraftKings, a lot of people are probably going to run the Bundy-Musgrove pairing. It makes sense. That's a pretty weak Texas lineup. Bundy's been pretty good this year. I also like Danny Duffy today for KC because of that weather. 12-degree winds blowing in that game as well. It's cold. You do have a play like Dustin May down here, who's going to come in low owned. He's in a good spot too. Taking a little bit of a risk there at his price. If you were to play him in cash, you'd be forced to punt elsewhere. So you're not going to have the bats that other people are going to have. So again, that's what we're looking for when we're looking at the cheat sheet. If you're looking for GPP plays, what I like to do a lot is, look at this K rate, look at the opposing K rate. So you can see Justice Sheffield. This is a terrifying matchup with LA, but they do K a bit, so you have some upside here. Potentially, again, it's LA. I'm not going out of my way to ever target against them, but that's some of the things you're looking at. So let's go ahead and move over to catcher first base. Again, cash games, we're starting with projected ownership. We've got Ohtani at first. We've got Will Smith at catcher. Those are your chalky pay-up options. Again, we can see why. You've got some more data on the player data. You've got Vegas totals. That's really important. You've got order. Typically in cash games, you want guys in the top 5 or so. That's important because the higher up in the order they bat, the more typically you're going to get an extra at bat compared to somebody who's batting 8th or 9th. So typically we're looking for guys at the top of the order. One exception is, especially with the position of catcher, it's a popular spot on DraftKings to punt because it's typically a bit weaker of a position. So if you're punting with a position, I don't care if they're batting pretty low in the order. Today, we really don't have anybody that cheap. We've got Kurt Casale coming in at 3K. He is batting 8th, as we can see here. They do have a decent total, 4.18. Again, this is a punt. You would be punting the position here. We also see Brandon Belt as a potential value first baseman on DraftKings. If you can't get up to Ohtani, Belt comes in at 1.2K less. Lefty versus righty matchup. He's got decent stats himself, so that's another play that makes a lot of sense. So that's what we're looking at here, projected ownership. On FanDuel, pricing's a little bit different. So we've got, Ohtani, we've got Brandon Belt's near minimum price. We've got Tommy LaStella leading off at 2.2K. He's very affordable. So that's why we're seeing here, he comes in, projected high ownership. You can sort these things. So if you're a FanDuel player, come in, sort it by FanDuel projected ownership. DraftKings, it automatically is, when you open it, it is sorted by DraftKings ownership because that's the more popular site. So, but batting data is the same way. We're looking at this hitter data is based on the opposing pitcher's handedness. So, it's really important. Again, same idea as what we're talking about with the pitcher is we want that data to be accurate. So that's what that is based on. For GPPs, you can look at ISO. I like to look at ISO a lot. That's essentially power. Thank you. 1 second. So for GPPs, you like power, home run, upside. So take a look at that ISO column. That's something I really like to utilize. Vegas totals. You could get like a Jared Walsh is going to come in a little bit lower ownership here. They've got a nice high total. Makes for a nice GPP pivot away from Otani, for instance. So again, that's how you're looking at that for GPPs and cash. Moving over to second, we've got David Fletcher coming in, $3,700, batting first. LA's got a nice high total, 5.15. We swing over to the projected ownership. He's at the top. This is an easy play, coming in at $3,700. Lead off for the highest total team on the slate at under 4K, which I consider to be a DraftKings value, which is why he's labeled DraftKings value over here. That's an easy play, plug and play for me. You do have Chris Taylor, top 5, but again, he's a grand more, which is why we see him projected lower, because it makes sense to play Fletcher here. On FanDuel, again, we come over here, sort it. We can see Fletcher's a little more expensive. That's why we see these guys come in a couple $100 less. They're all top 5. They all have decent totals. If you look at the stats, all the stats are really solid. That's why you're seeing these guys projected a little bit higher. Fletcher is absolutely in play here as well if you can get him. So what we're looking at here is for our cash builds, really all 3 of these guys would be in play. So just because Tommy Edmonds at the top doesn't mean I have to plug him in. This is so close that you could look at all 3 of these guys and they come in. Here you get Tommy La Stella at 700 cheaper. So that opens up some funds for you if you need it. So that's what we're looking for there. Again, GPP, same thing. I'm looking at ISO. I'm looking for a little bit of power. Those are the numbers I'm looking at. You can utilize this rank number as well, which essentially takes all the stats of the opposing pitcher and the batter, jumbles them all together, and says this is how this player ranks in comparison to everybody else in the field. So rank is a good thing to look at for sure. All right, moving over to third base. Third base, we have a really congested position with lots of different price options. Alec Baum comes in pretty cheap, batting 5th, decent total, $3,500. If you read our cash article today, Justin Turner's our cover boy. He's just crushing the ball. He's batting like 406, I believe. Pete's going to tell you he's a plug and play. Absolutely, if you can get him, he's definitely statistically the top play. Then we've got, Evan Longoria comes in kind of that mid-range if you can't get up to Turner, but you've got the funds to get him. He's there. Arenado, again, a couple $100 cheaper than Turner. So this is a position that ownership-wise could be a little bit spread out. We're going to tell you to prioritize Turner if you can. He's just been such a good player. But again, that's how we're using this ownership, is we've got a little jumbled up group here. They're all viable. Over on FanDuel, we sort by FanDuel. Same idea. We've got a couple different pricing plays here from 2,400 all the way to 4,300. All these guys are in play. You can see the projected ownership's all pretty close. We're not coming down here for cash. We're staying up here. GPP wise, you can come in, sort by ISO. Edwin Rios always makes a fantastic GPP play. He's got a lot of power people don't realize. So don't be afraid to take a look at that. Then we've got, let's go and move over to shortstop. So shortstop's a tough position. A lot of your best players, Trey Turner, Corey Seager, are always very, very expensive. Typically, worth the play if you can get up to them, but 5,700, for instance, that's really expensive. On FanDuel, he's only 3,800, so he's going to be super high owned. You can see that. On DraftKings, though, again, we've got a big jumbled up thing here. So if this is the way it remains, then you've got some flexibility at the position, and we've got a couple different pricing ranges, 34 all the way up to 5,700. Iglesias batting 7th. Again, typically cash, we're looking top 5, but when somebody's this cheap, he's only 3,400. You're essentially looking at this as a punt, so you can deal with the fact that he's batting 7th, especially when we take into account that he's got LA has a nice 515 total. So that's what we're looking at here. So that's what makes Iglesias a nice, viable punt. Over on FanDuel, again, I mentioned Corey Seager really is underpriced at 3,800. there's no reason he shouldn't be more expensive than these guys. If you need the funds, though, do some cheaper options here. But again, I think on DraftKings, on FanDuel especially, it's a pay up spot, as you can see by the projected ownership. All right, let's finish things off with outfield. I said that really funny with outfield. We've got a couple of LA big boy bats projected to see a ton of ownership on DraftKings. Ohtani 4,600 really is too cheap. He carries first base eligibility as well. Mike Trout's the best hitter in the game. We all know that. He's going to be really popular with them having the highest total on the board. Again, we can see projected ownership. They're pretty high out in front of everybody else. So I'm going to try and get minimum one of those guys, probably Ohtani at that price, but I would love to get Trout in my lineup if I can as well, which is why we'll probably see, swinging back to pitcher, we'll probably see Dylan Bundy paired with a Musgrove, simply due to the price factor, because it allows you to get, it'll open up some funds that you're desperately going to need if you want to grab one of these big boys. You do have Mookie Betts coming in at 5,900. In a scenario like this where I see, two big boys up top, what the ownership is saying is that one of these guys is going to be in most people's lineups. Probably not both, because it'd be really hard to fit them both, but one. This is where I typically would lean on Vegas totals, some of the actual stats. You can always take a look at their logs, see how they're performing. And that's what I would use to decide. For me, it would be Trout today over Mookie. Mookie's obviously a stud, but I'd be looking at Trout. And we do have Justin Upton coming in at 3,700, another guy who is very affordable, actually. Batting cleanup for the highest total team at 3,700. That's a nice play. He's been playing better as of late. Certainly got to like that play. Chris Taylor comes in as some cheaper exposure to the Dodgers, coming at 4,700, batting fifth. He's been playing well. AJ Pollock, he should pop up here pretty soon. He's batting sixth at 3,100. So again, that's how we're utilizing this. Though we're seeing here that getting some of these Angels bats in your cash is going to be pretty chalky, and you're going to want one of the big boys, Trout, Ohtani. You're going to want one of them in your cash lineup. That's what this projected ownership is showing us. Swinging over to FanDuel, we can see that Trout's going to be chalk city, $4,600, well out ahead of everybody else. This is one of those scenarios. This is just a plug and play. When somebody is 12% higher than the next closest, it means it's going to be chalk city. So you're going to want to figure out how to get Trout in your lineup. And then Tommy Edman, Soto. That's due to just pricing discrepancies. Soto, for instance, is super expensive on DraftKings. He's fairly affordable on FanDuel. He's actually cheaper than Ohtani, whereas it's reverse on DraftKings. So that's one of the things that actually really dictates ownership for all sports, is pricing discrepancies between the two sites. Player X is 1,100 cheaper on FanDuel than DraftKings. Well, typically that's going to lead to FanDuel ownership, and vice versa. So again, be sure, if you're a FanDuel player, be sure you utilize this. Sort by FanDuel ownership. It's really important because they're different sites. A lot of times in terms of pricing, it's going to lead to different builds. It's typically the same general idea, the same general high target teams, high total teams. But again, that pricing discrepancies between the two sites is going to drive some ownership. So really important to go in and sort by that. And again, same idea. Mention the rank. If we come in and sort by rank, we can see Mike Trout well ahead of everybody else. Not a surprise here. He makes for a slam dunk play. So that's typically, it's what we're looking at with the cheat sheet here. It's pretty straightforward. It looks a lot more complicated than it is. And once you get a hold of it, it's all of our cheat sheets are just fantastic. In all reality, you could go in with zero research and build a cash lineup every single day and compete every single day. So let's take a real quick look at Prize Picks. I did post an article today with a few plays that I liked. Let me check and see if those lines have stayed. Yeah, so I've got Mike Trout over 9.5. That's a big score, but he's hit that essentially every game this year. Let me see, I can tell you. Mike Trout has hit that in 8 of his 13 games this year. So well over 50%. He's got a really good matchup I see him getting over that today. Somebody asked me earlier, would you rather take, say, Trout over 2.5 bases instead of the over 9.5 total? My reason for that is because walks aren't included in the total bases. Mike Trout could get walked. They could pitch around him tonight. They could walk him 3-4 times. He could score 2-3 runs, steal a base, hit that over 9.5 that I have. Whereas if we were to go 2.5 total bases, he wouldn't get credit for any of those actions, any of those walks, any of those runs scored, any of those stolen bases. So for the total bases, I really like that. I think that's a really good way to attack Prize Picks, but I would be really iffy on anything really over 1.5, just because the fact that walks aren't factored in. You're really counting on your guy to hit, multiple hits or triple or a homer, anything over 2.5. So keep that in mind when you're looking at these. You start getting up in the 2.5, I'd be a little skeptical of total bases. Moving on, I do have, speaking of total bases, I have 2 plays I like. I have Justin Turner over 1.5 bases. He's been phenomenal this year. He's batting 4-4 on the season. He's hit over 1.5 total bases in 4 of his last 5 in 10 of 14 games on the year. That's ridiculous. He has a 389 WOBA against lefties, so he's getting on base a ton. Anything over 340 is what I'm looking for. 389 is fantastic. And to clarify, total bases is 1 point for single, 2 points for double, 3 for triple, 4 for homer. Do not get credit for walks, hit by pitch, anything like that. So tonight, if Turner doubles, he gets the over. If he hits 2 singles, he hits the over. I really like his odds of doing at least that. So I have one more total base that I like, and that's Will Myers over 1/2 base. Just needs a single. He gets a tough matchup with Brandon Woodruff, who's, pretty legit stud at this point. But the reason I like it is Myers is batting 327 on the year, which is a carryover from last year in which he hit 288, which that was his highest number since his rookie year. And he's been around a long time. So not sure what happened, what he's changed mechanically. But Will Myers has been really good for about 2 years now. And he's been able to get on base 12 of 13 games in which he started. He has at least a single. So if he can keep that going, 1 single, he hits that over. So I really like that over 1/2 base. Let me confirm those are both still there. 1 second. Yes, Will Myers is still at 1/2 and Justin Turner is at 1.5. Yes, so I continue to like both of those. And then my final one that I like is a pitching one. I mentioned in the beginning we have some really cold weather coming in. Actually, I see they've adjusted the lineup, but I still like it. Danny Duffy over. It's now up to 32. I still like that. He's hit that number both times this year. He's gone 6 innings pitched, both starts, quality start, picked up a win. He's allowed only 1 earned run between the 2 starts. One of those was against a really good Angels team that crushes lefties. So that's really encouraging. He also saw his fastest average velocity for a game since 2018. So a couple years. Tells me that he's feeling good, throwing the ball a little bit harder. Danny Duffy's not a bad pitcher. So factor in the fact that the Rays offense has been pretty cold. It's cold outside. It's only 41 in that game, and you have wind blowing in. And I really like Danny Duffy tonight to hit that. Even over 32, I'm comfortable with that number. So I'd be comfortable with that number up to about 34 or 35. So those are the Prize Picks plays I like. Pete mentioned Carlos Santana over 6.5 in his article. I didn't write up that play because of the cold weather. The one good thing about Santana, though, is he does draw a ton of walks. So he can draw a couple of walks. He's got a route to hit that over. But that was the reason I didn't include that, because it's gotten a little bit colder than it was. It was actually supposed to be about 50, and it's actually dropped all the way down to 40 now. So really not great hitters weather. So that is there as well. If you like that play, that was simply my reason for not writing it up, was the weather. So. All right. Well, with all that being said, nice quick one here today, half an hour. We've got plenty of time to build. I will be updating the cheat sheet again now, and then I will update it one final time before lock. especially for your cash lineups. Take a look at the projected ownership. Eat that chalk. There are a couple positions today that at the moment don't look like there's going to be a lot of chalk. Shortstop, third base are really looking like they're going to be kind of spread out. Even that third outfield spot. So those are the spots that you can win with. Tinker around. Don't get overly locked into a guy unless he's uber chalk, and you'll be in a really good spot. So, all right, thanks guys, and good luck.
Cool. We're good.
Cool. All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I had to adjust. You'll see if you look at the playback. It looked like it was coming in fuzzy. So I just went to a full screen look, which I actually think worked better, but you let me know, and the next time we can make changes accordingly.
I like the full screen. I think that looks nice.
Yeah, me too. It was tough. Well, I didn't think it was gonna look good, but then like what I had looked just squished. So the first like maybe minute or two when you talk about pictures, it looks a little hazy, and then I expanded it. And I think it looks way better.
Gotcha. Am I still live, by the way? Somebody says I'm still live.
I mean, not really. No.
Gervais said I'm still live too.
Hold on. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I guess you are.
Hey everyone.
Whatever. I'll kill the stream now.